So welcome everyone to our discussion of cybersecurity resilience for the energy industry. I'm Lori Liebrock, as they said, Director of the New Mexico Cybersecurity Center of Excellence, which is leading the Cyber Ready New Mexico program development to move our state to a leadership position in cybersecurity. It's my pleasure to introduce the panel of energy industry experts in cybersecurity. Malia Hodges is the Senior Vice President and Chief Information Officer for Encore Electric Delivery Company. Jay Johnson is a principal member of technical staff in renewable energy at Sandia National Laboratories. And Spencer Wilcox is Chief Security Officer and Executive Director of Technology at PNM Resources. So there's been a lot of discussion the last couple of days about energy resilience. So I'd like to ask our panel to start with, what does cybersecurity resilience mean in the energy industry?
Thank you, Lori. What a great question. And we were talking about this just before we came out here today. So resilience is a phenomenal word. It's actually, resiliency is something within the Encore family that we started talking about many years ago. And within the cybersecurity realm, it's about the hardening of our technology. It's also about the reliability of that with technology plus the infrastructure assets. But the other really important element around cybersecurity resilience is the human aspect. And the panel before lunch spoke about the human aspect quite a bit, but ensuring you have built resilience behaviors and habits in all that you do, both from your infrastructure that serves the communities, the technology that's able to monitor and speed up the delivery of service for our communities that we serve, but it's also the human element, which I see as one of the most important elements around cybersecurity resiliency.
Okay.
I guess I would just add a little bit more to that. So in terms of like the Nist cybersecurity framework, it's not just the protection and detection pieces of this, but it's actually responding and recovering. So, okay, we have some sort of disturbance on our system, but from that disturbance, and maybe it does cause, some sort of outage or something that puts you in a compromised state, you can quickly respond and recover. And I think that speaks to the capabilities of your people if they're ready for those types of situations. So cyber resilience is kind of all-encompassing in that sense.
And I agree with you, Jay. For me, resilience is about designing, building, and delivering technologies and processes that continue to operate even in a hostile and contested environment. When the bad guys are knocking on your door, you have to continue to operate. The power has to stay on. The lights have to stay on. The beer needs to stay cold. Our goal is to make sure that we absolutely can continue to operate regardless of the hazard, and cybersecurity is one of those key hazards.
So with cybercrime affecting more than 80% of businesses, you can see why cybersecurity is absolutely critical to the energy resilience. What do you see as the biggest challenges to cybersecurity resilience in the energy industry?
So I guess I have 3 items that spring to mind with that question. The first is labor workforce. So depending on who you ask, we're somewhere between 300,000 and 3 million people, cybersecurity personnel, short in the United States. And this situation is worsening. There's a huge need here, and we just don't have the capabilities. And so that leads you to the need for better training, better environments where you can learn these skills, developing more university programs to help with that. And then for the energy sector in particular, a couple of weeks ago we learned of a new malware, Pipedream, that just came out. It's the 7th malware that targets ICS, industrial control systems. And it is a very sophisticated piece of malware that can target programmable logic controllers. And so we see the capabilities of the adversaries increasing and the sophistication of the tools also increasing over time. And so that's a major challenge for the energy industry. And lastly, as we go to renewable energy, I do a lot of work for solar, wind, energy storage, et cetera. And what's interesting here is it's a non-federated environment where it's not just the utility owns these assets in a lot of cases. Electric vehicles, PV on your home, these are customer-owned devices, and they want to be able to pull up on their mobile phone what their production is and things like that. And so you've got the utility that needs to communicate with these devices and change their settings. You've got third-party aggregators that need to communicate. You've got homeowners or others that need to access this equipment. And so this is a new world in which you have a lot of people needing access to this data. And so how do you authenticate the users, verify that they're getting access only to what they need? And that's a major challenge for the renewable energy sector.
Two challenges that I'll speak to in response to that question, and I believe nearly every speaker during the summit that we've held here over the last day and a half has spoke about technology in some form or fashion. And the advancements of technology, even in the last 10 years, and the pace and the cadence of that is just so much faster than it used to be. And one of the key challenges with how fast we are developing and deploying technology, as well as digital devices out into the field and within our infrastructure, is just being able to keep up with ensuring cybersecurity is the foundation of everything that's being developed, everything that's deployed, and how we're connecting everything together. And at times that might have some of our partners thinking we're trying to slow things down by ensuring everything is built with the foundation of cyber, but it's really one of the most critical elements, especially with the advancements of technology and the pace and the cadence of which it's changing. And then the second challenge is around the human element as well, and the workforce itself. The workforce typically has a hard time understanding what we mean by cybersecurity. It's not something they can feel, they can touch, they can't see the threats that are knocking at the door every single second of the day. And so it's something they have to really just trust is happening. And ensuring that we meet each individual within the workforce, but especially in forums like this, and in the technology industry in itself, to meeting each individual with where they're at and understanding cybersecurity, because we really have to be developing those cyber champions as part of everything that we do.
So I'm going to echo a little bit of what Malia said. You know, that speed of deployment really speaks to two challenges that we're having worldwide. You know, one is with supply chain, and supply chain is a key issue, not just because cyber attackers can insert bad things into the supply of technology, but also because of the speed of deployment, right? Jay mentioned earlier the pipe dream malware, and one of the things that was interesting about that particular malware strain was the fact that it can destroy some of these programmable logic controllers such that they have to be sent back to the manufacturer for a reset in order to make them usable again. Imagine that while also on delay for 9 to 10 months to buy replacements or spares. The second thing I'll mention is in reference to the human workforce, and both of my colleagues mentioned that same topic. We're blessed at P&M with a fantastic and dedicated team of cyber professionals and technologists, but frankly, anybody can click a link, right? And that's an issue that we all have to address, and we've worked very hard to try and avoid that issue. But at the same time, we also have to recognize that those same technologists are responsible for the design and implementation of a very complex environment. And that complexity is, as Bruce Schneier once said, the enemy of security. So we have to figure out ways to keep everything as simple as we possibly can, to standardize technologies and technological implementation, maintain supply chains and good relationships with our suppliers, and train our workforce in how to work in these simplified and standardized environments in order to achieve security.
That's great. So I'm really excited to hear you talking about workforce and needing to improve the education, because that's part of what Cyber Ready has in its design, both from the perspective of education programs that are collaborative across the state, available via distance, so you're not requiring people to leave their jobs to advance their education, but also in workforce service programs where we can help provide services while students learn hands-on doing things. And I know that's something that Spencer's been working with us on. Now that we've kind of addressed what some of the big challenges are, what are the most effective strategies for achieving cybersecurity resilience in the energy industry?
So, yeah, everybody's like, I don't want to touch this one. Now actually, you know, I think it does start with that workforce development and with that opportunity to really build key players that are going to be able to evolve with the threat. You know, this problem has been evolutionary. I've been in cyber, well, since 1997 in one capacity or another, which just means I'm old. But the reality is, as we start to look at that development, I evolved along with the cyber threat. People walking into this industry now are looking at one of the most complex threats that we've ever seen as we're evolving a very complex technology environment. We have to look at developing workforce really beginning at the middle school level or even before, ensuring that logic and technology are part and parcel of everything that everyone learns. The other thing is diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I'll say this and take it for what it's worth. One of the key challenges we have is most of the people that are in cybersecurity, and I'll give kudos and props to Malia for being the only one who's not an old white guy on the stage. No offense, Jay.
Hey, I'm pretty young.
So, right, yeah, true. And of course, you know, but you know, for whatever it's worth, what we want to point out is we need to include more people from different and diverse backgrounds. We need to include more females in technology. We need to ensure that cyber is a component of everything that they do. And only by doing that will we be able to build resilient and reliable technologies for the future.
The piece I'll add to that as well is within the energy industry, we have always focused heavily around physical security and, you know, having our people go home the same way they came to work that day. And at Encore, we have established a culture of cyber safety tied in with that as well, partnering with our safety team at the company, and that we do things in partnership a lot together to really help educate, because a cyber event could cause a physical human to get injured or hurt or worse than that. And creating that culture of cyber safety is, again, something you've got to do every single day. And it's a habit, it's a behavior that you have to continue to reinforce and deliver that message in different ways based upon the type of workforce that you're speaking with at that particular time. And, you know, in the technology organization, I mean, you know, we are getting briefings every day from all the three-letter agencies. We have internal briefings around threats that are happening, especially with things going on in the world right now. And that just is a phenomenal way to start your day, by the way. But it also establishes that resiliency that we all must have to work together. The cyber safety culture piece of it as well is that when there is a potential incident happening or when we get an alert of some kind of threat, it's really taking people off of what they're doing and putting them in that moment so they can learn real time on the job. How are we investigating this? How are we defending? How are we protecting? What are we looking at? And that's really part of the other piece of being able to take people away so that they can learn on the job whenever there is something potentially real happening in the environment, just so it's not, it's in addition to any kind of textbooks reading or other types of education that the workforce would get.
Yeah, I'll echo that. We need to get away from this idea of, hey, we're from the government, we're here to help, and more into the public-private partnerships, information sharing programs where the intelligence and the the data that we're providing you is valuable. And so like the DHS CISA's Shields Up program recently has identified some things that they want to try to improve at a lot of different energy corporations. And so at least having a bolded list of, hey, can you just verify that we're addressing some of these things, I think is useful. And then that, along with threat intelligence, is valuable insight. And then I guess since I am from Sandy, I should talk a little bit about up-and-coming R&D and cybersecurity research. We have a lot of really cool technologies that we're developing at Sandia and elsewhere across the National Lab Complex. Moving target defense things. I've been recently working on security orchestration, automation, and response technologies, SOAR, for energy, PV systems right now. And so we can do a lot to take away some of this flood of alerts that the Security Operations Center folks are dealing with. I think I heard a statistic that on average, a SOC, or Security Operations Center, gets about 10,000 alerts a day and has a workforce of between 2 to 10 folks, somewhere on that order. I'd be curious to hear what your statistics are. But it's just impossible, right? You're getting all these endpoint devices are reporting back, hey, I've got a login of this person at this credential, Active Directory, et cetera. And it's just overwhelming. So how do you sift through that to the actual important nuggets and take that piece of information and make it actionable and solve real problems? I think there's a lot of cool research going on right now that we can help address some of those problems.
It's an excellent point. One of the things that I would, and just to answer your question real quickly, Jay, for us, it's a much smaller team than that, right? So 1 to 2 people that are dedicated to it today, and tomorrow might be working on vulnerabilities, right? And as we start looking at that, and of course we've got a fairly robust team, but they have to start cross-training. And one of the things that we're really looking at is that partnerships piece. It's information sharing, but we have to stop just sharing information. Yeah. That's important. You've got to start there. But we also need to mutually defend one another. Cybersecurity is a team sport. And one of the things I'd like to call out is that your team at Sandia Labs has been very beneficial to us at PNM in helping us to understand our own threat environment, as well as some of the things that we can do to defend. And those partnerships have really paid off from my perspective.
So I think these 2 comments about research and collaboration are really a great lead-in to a related topic. That Cyber Ready program that we mentioned earlier has multiple components that are being coordinated, at least by the Cybersecurity Center of Excellence. Part of that is an education pathways from middle school at the very latest as a start, through certifications at the high school level and collaborative education programs around the state, including, for example, our transdisciplinary cybersecurity program at New Mexico Tech is being done now in collaboration with Highlands. And so those programs are sharing courses and instructors, as well as students learning from each other across institutions. And another piece of this is a service program that we're just developing, and Spencer's been